Hello makers, welcome back to part 2 of my Twisted Scripture Handbound journal for the month of October. This video will cover the decorating of the cover. And so I began with a crumpled up bag. Basically it was a shop bag from an antique store. I had just purchased some antique books a few weeks ago, and this was the little bag that they were in, and I literally started to throw it away. So I had crumpled it up, and then as I was ready to pitch it in the trash can, I said, wait, this can be some great texture. So I threw it on my desk and it sat there for a few weeks, and then when I started working on my journal, I thought this would be a great way to add texture to that. And so of course I crumpled it some more and got it really crumpled up, and then basically just tore it on the seams around the edges. And I crumpled one piece and threw it to the side for another project later, and then just worked on half of the bag, so basically one side of the bag. Once I laid it out, I started distressing it, and I began with vintage photo, which is just kind of a standard lighter brown, great color for distressing anything, making it look old and vintage. And I used a domed foam blender from Ranger. So the dome is nice because I wanted to hit those crinkles on top. I didn't want to push the ink all the way down onto the bag, and I was primarily trying to get the wrinkles. So it was nice because if I didn't press too hard, I could just brush that dome across the top, and even though it gets ink all over the bag, the majority of the ink is going to go on those little peaks where the paper has been crumpled, whatever. So I did some vintage photo, and I just kind of did it randomly all over. I knew that I didn't want the whole bag to be one solid color. So started off just with that one. And then after I had some of that on there, I switched to the Walnut Stain, which is a little darker brown. And these are all Distress inks by Ranger, Tim Holtz Distress inks. So the Walnut Stain was just adding a little bit more depth and dimension because now I had two different values on there. So again, I'm just kind of randomly putting the Walnut Stain in random places. And as I'm doing this, I wasn't completely sure what all colors I wanted to use, but I decided I wanted them to be colors from the kit this month, things that would blend with it. So then I picked up forest moss to pull out the greens in the foliage and stuff in the ephemera. And so I started putting some green around there. And while I was doing that, I decided, well, I don't want the whole piece of paper to be exactly the same because I might want some variety as I'm working throughout the kit this month. So I decided to only do half of it green. And then I pulled out fired brick, I guess, and started doing the other side with that. So I ended up, it's kind of like a little Christmassy when I'm looking at it all together because I have one half of the paper the red and one half of the paper green. But both of those colors are in the kit this month with the flowers and the leaves and all of that. So I wanted to have just a little bit of variety. And the nice thing is that last month's study, Take Heed, had many similar colors with the browns and the greens and the reds. So I can also use scraps of this to finish up my decorative pages from Take Heed from last month. So once I got that done, then I just heat set it, just kind of put a little heat on it real quick because I knew then that I wanted to put some metallic splatters in there and just add a little bit more interest to the paper. So I pulled out my Foundry Wax, and this is the color Statue. And I decided that I wanted to try and splatter this. Now, Foundry Wax, if you haven't worked with it, you have a very short working time because it starts to harden very quickly. So I only put a small amount out, and I used a small brush and just kind of flicked it off the end of the brush. Now, I will say this does not splatter as easily as a thinner medium like paint or water or anything like that. You have to work very quickly. And it did start to harden before I had finished. And so I just quickly picked up what was left and I started to just kind of brush it atop some of the wrinkles that were on there. just to get it off my palette and get it onto the paper as quickly as possible. So biggest thing about doing it this way is that you need to make sure that you clean that brush out right away. So I just took a baby wipe and I wiped out my brush really quick and then used the same baby wipe to clean my palette off. The nice thing about this Foundry Wax is it doesn't look like much when you put it on, but as soon as you hit it with the heat tool, it starts to get this beautiful metallic, shimmery, golden color. And it comes in other colors. I think there's 3 colors right now. I don't know them off the top of my head, but there's 3 different ones. And so the heat hits this, and it's kind of hard to see on this paper bag, so I was trying to make sure that I got all of the little splatters that I'd put on it, because it was actually kind of hard to see until I hit it with the heat tool, and then it starts to show up more. And I know it's not going to show up on camera here very well, but if you look closely, you can just kind of see where all those really nice little shimmers are that come from the Foundry Wax. So I was really happy with how this turned out, and I'll be able to use pieces of this paper for both September and October's kit. So this is some of the ephemera from October's Twisted Scripture kit, and you can see that the colors just go really well with them. So the colors I used again are the Fired Brick, the Forest Moss, the Vintage Photo, and the Walnut Stain, along with the Statue Foundry Wax. So next I took that piece of paper that has the tree rings on it that came in the kit, and I wanted a piece that looked like a slice of the log to put my title sticker on. So I found the circle on the piece of paper that I liked the best, and then I slowly tore it out, going around the edges, so that I had that white tear around the edge of it that made it look like really barky around the edge. I took the walnut distress ink and went around that edge to give it even more of that bark look, because obviously the bark is not going to look white. My torn white edge was a little bit stark, but I tore it because I wanted it to have kind of that rough, barky look to it. And then with the walnut stain around the edge, by the time I got done, it actually looked like a slice off of a tree. I didn't want my sticker to have the stark white background, so I pulled my Vintage Photo ink back out, and I just very lightly went around the edge. You can see the line where you peel the sticker off the paper. So I just went around that edge and left it a little bit lighter in the center, because the idea is that I just wanted those edges to blend in with the wood grain or the rings on the tree, so that the sticker didn't stand out and look completely separate. I wanted it to look more like one unit. So that Vintage Photo matched really well. And then as I was laying it down, I was realizing I didn't like the way it fit in there. So I just had to adjust it and turn it, because it is an odd shape. But once I turned it, the way those 2 flowers on the right stick up, it just kind of fit in that little notch that sticks out. So I liked it. You know, sometimes you just have to, you'll start to lay something down and you just have to look at it a second time and try to decide which is the best way to fit it in there. So I really like the way that fit in there. Just kind of smoothed that all out, and then I just, it was totally an accident actually deciding how I was going to do this paper that I had just made. But when I went to lay my title down on the top of the book, the paper was laying there to the right, and I was just like, oh, let's just put an edge on the edge of the book. I didn't really plan originally on putting it on my cover. I was just trying to make a title for my cover, but it was just kind of happenstance when I saw that torn edge. And then I made the torn edge a little bit rougher, because the way it was originally on the bag was a little bit too straight. So once I figured that out, I adjusted to figure out where I wanted the bag to fit on the book. And then I didn't want to lose the spot that I had it in. So once I got it where I wanted it, I just basically took my finger and just kind of pressed down around those edges. So I got to put the glue on the back, but I need to know where to put the glue. So that's where I just went around the edges there. And that just gave me the space that I needed to put the glue in, so that when I flip the paper over, and this is a trick that you can use on any other types of papers and things like that. I am kind of a waste not, want not kind of person, so I use every little tiny scrap of paper, even in the packaging and stuff from By the Well for God. Like, I take my stamps out of the packaging and put them in plastic containers, and I take that little piece of cardstock that's printed on it, I cut those out and use them as ephemera. Or if there's a pattern on there, I use that as ephemera to decorate pages, because I just like to use every little thing. So rather than just start cutting this apart with scissors, because I want to be able to use all this paper, that's why I laid it down on top and then just pressed around with my fingers so that I'm literally using only what I need for the cover. It helped me to know where to line it up after I got the glue on it. All I had to do was match that impression back up with the edge of the book and then press that down. Then all I had left to do was to trim the paper around the edge, and I just took my X-Acto knife and went around and trimmed that off. And then as I was getting ready to put my title on, you'll notice that I hesitated a little bit because I was thinking about putting foam squares on the back, but I thought about the fact that it's a book and I might be sliding it on and off a shelf, and I didn't want the raised title to get caught on anything and rip my cover. But if you wanted to raise it up, you could certainly do that. If you have not seen the Japanese stab binding video, which was the first part of this journal, I'll link that and you can take a look at that one. If you've already seen that one, thank you so much for coming back to watch the cover design, and I really appreciate you. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I've had kind of a crazy summer, so my channel kind of got put on hold, but I am hoping to kick things into high gear and get a lot more videos on. If there's something you want to see, comment down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.